you little shit brains. Sorry about the insult, but I just got back from a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, and, well, someone reminded me today why I stopped playing in tournaments altogether. And I play a mostly what I consider to be a pretty good deck that's not completely and totally unfair. As far as fairness goes, I'd say it's slightly unfair, but not completely fair, like most normal decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! What do I mean by decks that are mostly fair? Well, in Yu-Gi-Oh! There are three types of people. There are jerks, there are douches, and then there are the nerds. The nerds want everything to be exactly like the anime. They believe that if it didn't exist in the anime, it shouldn't be used in any modern deck, and build what they call fair decks, meaning they are completely accurate and only use what that character would have realistically had access to in their universe and timeline. Then there are the jerks. These guys may play a little unfair decks, meaning they have strong boss monsters that are difficult to get around and have monsters that are pretty tough to beat. And then there are the last group. The jerks. The douche nozzles. These are the complete and total assholes of Yu-Gi-Oh! They play the ultra evil decks, or what I refer to as the unfair decks. These are any decks that purposely punish you for ever sitting down to play Yu-Gi-Oh! These are anything that includes the runic archetype, or completely and totally punishes you for sitting down to play. The only hindrance to playing these types of decks is that they may have some advantage to seem like they're fair to everyone else, but they're completely and totally bogus because they cheat you out of fairly winning, because the minute you see what type of deck you're against, you're like, oh fuck. My opponent's gonna use some sort of bullshit strategy like the Cash King archetype or the Kaching archetype to XYZ summon out a card that basically allows them to completely and totally lock me out of summoning anything. Or they're just going to play monsters that don't stay in the graveyard, or even hit the graveyard, so cards like Called by the Grave are completely and totally useless. And if they're using Runic, well then that means that they're playing the Banished strategy, where they're basically milling out your entire deck, making it so you can't even summon any monsters because your deck's basically hitting the graveyard. Sorry, the banished zone. And being completely and totally removed from play because you can't do anything to stop it. I personally think that anyone who plays these types of decks is a complete and total a-hole who should be completely and totally banned from Yu-Gi-Oh! For life. And that Konami should really get rid of these unfair decks. Now, fortunately, hand traps do make playing against these decks somewhat viable if you can actually manage to draw out your hand traps and stop your opponents from activating their effects. But even cards like Clearwing Synchro Dragon or Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon or Starving Venom Fusion Dragon aren't all that useful. Heck, even Supreme King Dragon Zark, which creates a nearly perfectly impenetrable wall, isn't enough to stop decks like this. Because more often than not, you're never going to get the cards you need to summon it because your opponent just is going to stop you from using your strategy to build your end board. And then when you complain and ask them to stop playing unfair decks like this, they're like, tough titties, that's how the game's played. Hey, learn a better deck. They're basically forcing you to learn the decks that they want you to play. And making you like them. Eventually, it's going to be at the point where someone's going to create a deck known as Perfectly Unfair, which is going to have cards like False Start, which basically makes it so you have to both players have to shuffle their entire hands back into their deck. Extra Lock, which is going to completely and totally lock you out of your extra deck. Brutal Banishment, or Perfect Banishment, which is going to make it so if you go first, you can force your player to banish their entire hand and deck and extra deck, making it so they can't even play. And then there's the final evil card in that deck, which is going to be Perfect Permanence, which is going to permanently set your life points to 0. Eventually, it's going to get so unfun that no one is going to want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever again. But what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Post your comments in the comment section down below. Leave a dislike on the video. If you so choose. And please, subscribe to the channel. Because I don't always make videos like this. Only when people make me rant.